Chapter 20, Cope, Jasmine's Perspective. 3 months have passed since then, and I honestly haven't been doing well. I was sitting in a chair outside the office waiting to be called in. Since Lypye left, I've been acting up, according to my teachers. My mind keeps wandering, and I keep forgetting my homework or gazing off into space. The door opened, and a man in his mid-40s stepped out. "It's gross." I sighed and stood up. "Please come in." I walked into the office and sat down in the chair in front of the principal's desk, crossing my legs. I was wearing black skinny jeans and a tight gray t-shirt. The principal sat down at his desk and folded his hands together. "Miss Gross, this is the third time you've been sent to the office this month. First, for starting a fight with another student. It was Mo Jones, the biggest bully in the school. He's picked on and started fights with multiple students and constantly gets away with it." He held up his hand. "Mr. Jones has his own track record with constantly being in my office along with his brother. Second, you came to school dressed inappropriately. A hoodie that shows a little bit of my stomach isn't that bad," I pointed out. "Which brings us to now. You swore multiple times at a teacher when he asked you where your school uniform was." I sat up straight and uncrossed my legs. "First of all, that uniform is sexist and degrades my individuality. Second of all, he was pissing me off. He kinda deserved it. I've also noticed that your grades have slipped, mainly due to missing or late homework. The only reason you're not failing is because you've been scoring well on your tests. I can email your teachers about getting at least partial credit for all your missing homework, but only if you're willing to put in the work." I shrugged. "The teachers aren't assholes about it, I will." "Okay, let's dial down on the profanity. Can I ask if you're okay?" I glared at the principal. "Why wouldn't I be?" He took a deep breath. "We know a few months back you were held hostage by Lypye, then later her henchmen." "Oh, is that the story they went with?" I crossed my arms and raised my eyebrows annoyed. "That is what Lypye admitted to. I know that event was probably traumatic. Are you a principal or a guidance counselor? She didn't traumatize me in any way. Listen." I rested my arms on the desk and leaned forward. "I don't need you playing therapist, pretending to care." He stood up. "I will be right back." I watched him leave the room and close the door behind him. I leaned back in the chair. I kept pushing Lypye to not let anger control her actions, but now I'm doing the same thing. I know it's fair, and I know this was her choice, but it still angers me to think about. I knew her for 4 months, not years. I shouldn't care. I've always been surprised that Lypye cares about me. I heard a quiet knock on the door. Looking up, I saw Jagwerye walk in, closing the door quietly behind her. I crossed my arms. "What are you doing here?" She smiled patiently, sitting down next to the chair next to me. "The principal knows me and my team's secret identities in case he needs to call us out of class for an attack." I nodded, understanding, then looked away, taking deep breaths to calm myself down. "Listen, Jasmine, the principal told me why you keep ending up here, and I think I know what this is about." I rolled my eyes. "Let me guess. Like everyone else, you think Lypye traumatized me." She took a deep breath. "Not traumatized. It is very clear that she did have an impact on you, though." "Why ever would you think that?" I said sarcastically. "The way you are speaking, acting, and dressing seems to be playing a part," she responded. "Do you understand sarcasm?" I closed my eyes, taking deep breaths. "Jasmine." She grabbed my shoulders. I pushed her hand away and stood up. "Don't touch me." She stood up too, trying to look me in the eyes. "Look, I understand how you feel." "No, you don't!" I yelled. She slowly walked towards me. "Yes, I do." I used my powers, lifting up the chair I had been sitting in. Angrily, I threw the chair at her, but she dodged it, front rolling on the ground. She was down on one knee. "Jasmine, please, calm down." I clenched my fists together, lifting all the things around me. She ran up to me and grabbed my shoulders, breaking my concentration. All the objects fell and I broke down crying. "It's not fair!" To my surprise, Jagwerye lightly hugged me, reading the situation perfectly. "Your mom adopted her. She is your sister too." She let me go and looked into my eyes. "By blood, she is my sister too. I think what hurts the most is that you have learned more about Lypye in 4 months than I have in 13,000 years." I looked down. "Why? Why bother with me? I did what you wanted. I talked to her. She responded. I looked up, surprised. She's not evil. Not entirely. Lypye told me that the cycle would break somehow. Hyena and I believed someone who did not know her well might have that power. We stared at each other in awkward silence before I came to a realization. Me? But then why did you constantly try to push me away from her? Our job is to protect all mortals. I wanted to make sure you were okay. None of us were going to risk your life for a theory. We were always keeping an eye on you, she explained. I gave a small chuckle. You want to know something funny? She stared at me curiously. What? I told Lypye, dress in something that makes you feel like you and don't let anger control your actions. Guess what I'm doing? Are you sure it is just anger? She sighed. Lypye told me about your depression. Is that playing a part? I backed up, angry. What do you know about depression? I turned to leave. I have depression, she answered. I froze in place, turning to face her. What? She stared at the ground. Mom told me that I have to be this flawless god. I would get in trouble for any talking out of turn, or not speaking in a proper manner. The only time I can be myself is by leading the Syara Team. Hyena and Lypye do not even know how bad she was to me. Curiosity took hold of me. Didn't you get whatever you wanted? Money cannot buy happiness, she mumbled. I got what I wanted if I met my mom's high expectations. She should get me something because she loves me. She should also have the ability to say, no, I have enough. There is a difference between awarding good behavior and awarding me for not being myself. I avoided eye contact, understanding. Why are you telling me all of this? Telling you felt like it was the only way to make you listen to me, she admitted. I sighed. Am I allowed to visit her? Not yet, but I will make sure you will. I looked up to see her gentle smile. You did something none of us believed possible. I smiled. She's right. Lypye was thought to be evil for 15,000 years. Then I came along and changed that in a span of 4 months. I believed in my heart that she cares. Her actions proved that. How I chose to cope with losing her was less than ideal. I chose to act exactly like how she did when I first met her. She sighed. Promise me that you will try to clean up your act? I nodded. I promise. Chapter 21, Trap, Jagwerye's Perspective. My mind had been wandering all day, thinking back on my conversation with Jasmine. What I saw was the aftermath of a friendship. What others saw was Lypye's influence rubbing off on her. She's angry. That's all it is. I was 10 minutes late for the Syara Team meeting, having lost track of time. I walked in and Lypye and Hyena looked up at me. Well, this is new, Hyena commented. Usually I'm the one that's late. Are you okay? Lypye asked. Remember earlier when the teacher called me out of English? She asked. They both nodded. I paused. It was because of Jasmine. Hyena crossed his arms. Mortal? What did she want? The principal wanted me to talk to her. I sighed. She is not doing well. How so? Lypye asked. I began pacing. After losing Lypye, she is using anger as a coping mechanism. A lot of her words and actions are coming from anger and sadness. Her grades are slipping as well. So, basically, she's becoming a mortal version of Lypye, Hyena pointed out. Close. How Lypye used to act, I corrected. She is hurting. It is understandable. What do we do to nip that in the bud? Lypye asked. I took a deep breath. I granted Jasmine visitation. What? Lypye blurted out. Do you understand maximum confinement at all? Hyena asked. If Mom doesn't need to know, I snapped, interrupting and snapping. Hyena mumbled. I sighed. Can you please stop keeping tabs on me? I get it. I am not as perfect as Mom wants me to be. Hyena clapped slowly. You finally admit it. I never once said I was perfect. Mom tried to raise me to be Lypye's opposite. She tried to make sure we had nothing in common so we would hate each other. I pushed. She cannot make me hate Lypye though. She is still my sister and I can tell that she cares about us. Hyena nodded. I can agree that Lypye cares. You can't put all the blame on Mom.
I was raised to believe that having any flaw was bad,
I yelled. We both heard a sharp whistle pierce through the air. Turning our heads, we looked to see Pantheria looking at the cameras. She pointed to one at City Hall. We've got some activity. Hyena and I scrambled over to her. King and Kim were working on a laser. Karo was nowhere to be found. I switched the cameras over to the jail cells to see Kim's cell busted open and empty. The guard and Lypye were talking. We have to get to City Hall, I yelled. I flew the team up to the roof quietly, hiding behind a pillar near the doorway, trying not to alert anyone. Pantheria and I watched Hyena peek his head out, trying to get a better view. They'll be blown away by this plan, Kim exclaimed, laughing maniacally. Couldn't have said it better myself, King said calmly. I peeked around the corner to see Kim looking in our direction. They're a little ahead of schedule. King turned around, smirking. I walked into view with Hyena and Pantheria behind me. A cage fell down from the air, completely containing us. I looked over to see Karo smirking at us, flipping a switch. Lypye never let us do this because she thought it was too extreme, King explained. I, frankly, don't care. This cage, like our jail cells, neutralizes all powers. And you do not think we know the tricks to bypass that? I asked, grabbing the bars. The bar sent a searing bolt of electricity up my arms, causing me to stumble back into Pantheria. Hyena attempted to punch the ground, but all that resulted in was him holding his hand, face twisting in pain. I anticipated that. Unlike the jail cells that are unaffected by powers or enhancements, this cell neutralizes anyone inside it. In there, you're basically immortal. Also, that electric shock, touch the bars and attempt to reach through them, and it'll happen. He smirked, holding up some keys. The only way out is with these. He stuffed them into his pocket, and you'll never get them. He laughed evilly, walking with Kim back to the laser. Pantheria looked at me. What do we do? I started panicking, looking around for any leak spots. We've never needed a backup plan with Lypye. Her plans have never worked. I didn't expect it to be any different. I do not know, I breathed, falling to my knees. Pantheria kneeled down to one knee next to me. I don't know what it is, but I know that something will come along. I wish I had your optimism, I mumbled. Not optimism, she muttered. I looked up at her. I had a vision right before the cage fell. It was vivid, but I know they don't win. I looked up at her, but something caught my eye, causing me to look past her. Hyena was smirking. Hyena? He looked at us. Did they ever get that TV for Lypye to keep her occupied? The chief was very clear about special privileges, but I bargained, I explained. I wonder. Hyena started. What do you think will happen when Lypye sees the news? He pointed to a news helicopter, chuckling.